Imagine being told the only medical treatment for a spider bite is a live band and hours of frantic dancing, and that doctors, priests, and your entire community would take that prescription completely seriously. For roughly 700 years in southern Italy, that was not a metaphor. If you were bitten by the local tarantula, the accepted cure wasn't rest or medicine. It was music, played until you danced yourself back to health. Entire towns organized their summers around it, and when a research team finally studied it properly in the 20th century, using recordings, photographs, and direct interviews, what they found had almost nothing to do with spiders at all. The tradition is rooted in the Salento region of Puglia, at the heel of Italy's boot, with records going back to at least the 11th century, though it became a widespread seasonal phenomenon starting around the 15th century, peaking through the 16th and 17th, concentrated specifically around the province of Taranto, which is where the name comes from. Bite victims, most commonly women working the summer grain harvest, were believed to fall into a kind of trance-like affliction. Lethargy, distress, physical pain, that could only be relieved by a specific ritual. Musicians would play a rapid folk rhythm, later codified as the pizzichia, and the afflicted person would dance, sometimes for hours, sometimes across multiple days until the affliction lifted. This wasn't a fringe folk remedy practiced quietly. It shaped the working calendar, supported musicians as a recognized local profession, and was taken seriously enough to eventually become bound up with organized religion. The diagnostic process itself was surprisingly specific. The tarantula blamed wasn't tied to any single real species. Tradition described it in color variants, principally red, green, and black, each supposedly producing different symptoms. A red spider's bite was said to bring on martial, aggressive behavior. A green spider's bite produced eroticized behavior, and a black spider's bite left the afflicted fixated on funeral imagery and mourning objects. Musicians handled this by presenting colored ribbons to the sufferer one at a time, watching for a reaction, and playing a tune to match whichever color the person responded to. Once the right rhythm started, sufferers would sometimes crawl across the floor in an exaggerated mimicry of a spider's movement before rising into the dance itself, sweating heavily, which the ritual held was the actual mechanism of expelling the venom from the body. Over time, the tradition became tied to the cult of St. Paul. In the town of Galatina, a chapel dedicated to him because the pilgrimage site for people believed to be afflicted, known locally as tarantati, would travel there specifically around his feast day, June 29th, either to give thanks for a cure already received or to plead for one still needed. The ritual wasn't purely medical or purely religious. It braided both together, combining folk medicine, communal music, and formal Catholic devotion into a single yearly event that an entire region organized its calendar around. A condition supposedly caused by spider venom had, by this point, developed its own patron saint, its own pilgrimage site, and its own annual feast day deadline. In 1959, someone finally studied it properly instead of just describing it. Italian anthropologist Ernesto de Martino led an interdisciplinary research team, including musicologist Diego Carpitella, to Galatina that summer, where they recorded, photographed, and interviewed the tarantati directly. Sampling 35 afflicted people and following 19 of them back to their home villages for deeper study. His conclusions, published in 1961 as La Terra del Rimorso, the land of remorse, argued that Tarantism had essentially nothing to do with actual spider venom. Modern toxicology backs this up directly. The regional wolf spider's bite isn't considered medically dangerous to humans at all. What DiMartino documented instead was a structured, culturally sanctioned outlet, a socially permitted way, especially for women under real psychological and social strain, to express distress that had no other acceptable channel dressed in the language of a spider bite, because that was a story the whole community already knew how to respond to. So the cure was never really treating a bite, it was treating something that had no other name yet, using the one ritual a community already trusted, and it kept working, generation after generation, for exactly that reason. The specific belief about venom faded as toxicology advanced, but the ritual it created didn't disappear so cleanly. The Pizzica de Martino, recorded in 1959, didn't stay confined to a medical folk cure. It got picked up decades later by a regional folk music revival and turned into a celebrated cultural symbol, performed at festivals across Puglia today. Completely detached from any claim about spider bites, kept alive for the music and the identity rather than the diagnosis that originally justified it. So, a phenomenon that started as a supposedly literal medical emergency ended up as a celebrated regional heritage, with the actual medical claim quietly dropped somewhere along the way, and nobody seemed to mind. What does it say that the cure outlived the disease it was invented to treat? Maybe the dancing itself was always the point, and the spider was just the excuse everyone needed to take it seriously.